What If Learning is an approach that was developed by a team of international educationists, people from Australia, the UK and the USA, and its aim was to support teachers who are working in church schools, because across the world we were aware that there was the aspiration that the learning in the classroom should be Christian in its approach, but that teachers found that very difficult to interpret. So it's an approach which is designed to support them in doing that. What If Learning has been built around 3 steps, the first of which we call Seeing Anew, and what that's about is understanding how the way in which the subject matter is framed is very significant for how the children come to understand it. The second step in the approach is called Choosing Engagement, and that's all to do with how the children, the pupils, experience the lesson in the classroom. So it's about the design of learning activities. And the third step in the approach is called Reshaping Practice, and that's where we ask teachers to focus on what we call their habits of the classroom, the things that they do which actually cause the children to understand the experience that they're having in particular ways, and we want that experience to be distinctively Christian. Yep. The aspiration that we had for What If Learning is that it wouldn't depend on teachers having to develop a whole new curriculum or do lots of additional content-based work. The idea is that they ask themselves 2 simple questions, one of which is what's your aspiration for the students who are going through your lessons? What do you hope that they are going to emerge in terms of the sort of people they are? What would it be like? What sort of scientist would they be? What sort of mathematician would they be as a result of being in your lessons? So it's a focus on the person and the student and their character. And the second question is, what do you think your students imagine that they're doing in their classroom? And that's about how the students perceive the tasks that they're being asked to engage in. Let me just give you one example to illustrate what I've been talking about there. I went to a school where the physical education teacher was very keen to teach his subject area Christianly. And he was teaching the push pass in hockey. Now, if you ask the teacher to say, what is it that's Christian about how you teach the push pass, a lot of them would be really defeated by that. But what this teacher did was to focus his whole lesson on the concept of coaching. Now, the reason that he did that was because where I come from in the UK, boys' sport particularly, is associated with personal success and being the centre of attention because you've scored the goal. And he wanted to offer his students a different vision of how sport featured in human life. And what he did was to set up an exercise where the youngsters, first of all, were taught how to do the push pass. So they learnt the skill. And then the activity that they were asked to engage in was to teach each other in pairs. And the assessed task was that they had to identify what strategies they had used to encourage their partner. So when we asked the children about what they thought they were doing, what did they imagine they were learning, they said we were learning how to be a good encourager. Now what he's done is to reframe the whole lesson. It's still a lesson about the push pass. It's still a physical education lesson. It's not a sport lesson with a bit of Bible added onto it, but he'd framed it in a Christian understanding of relationships which he wanted to strengthen. And the whole coaching metaphor was what they used with the children through the physical education curriculum. What I think it's doing is offering them an understanding of pedagogy which is framed by a Christian vision of what it is to be a human being. And it's helping them to deliver that in the classroom in ways in which teachers really understand, because we're not asking them to give Christian sermons in lessons of maths and history. What we're asking them to do is to reframe the teaching of history, the teaching of physical education, the teaching of maths in a way which is producing children who have Christian character. I think the important thing about What If learning is it enables the subject still to be the centre of attention, but it's framed in a Christian understanding of the world. When I'm trying to talk about Christian learning, one of the phrases that I might use is the notion of a biblically shaped education. Now, people often assume that what that means is that in every lesson you have a Bible verse. I don't mean that. What I mean is an education where the framework of the thinking that's going on in the classroom, the framework of the learning experiences which the children are experiencing, that they are drawn from the biblical narrative. And by the biblical narrative, I mean the sort of story of creation, fall, redemption, and the second coming, which shapes the whole of the scriptural message. Perhaps I can give you an example to illustrate that. When children go to secondary school, one of the big things that the school is seeking to do is to prepare them for adult life. And that's often interpreted quite narrowly in terms of preparing them for a career. So we talk about careers education. What that usually entails is concepts like success, achievement, salary, status. It's all about you as a person and your own aggrandizement in the world. I wonder whether if schools, Anglican schools, thought of themselves as places where they helped children think about their vocation in life rather than their career, that make a huge difference, because vocation is a biblical idea. It's about what sort of person has God made me to be? What are the gifts that God has given me? How can these be used in the service of the church and the wider community? Now, career comes into that, but it's not the only thing. It's about what sort of a husband or a wife are you going to be? What sort of role are you going to play in the wider community through voluntary work? So it's a very big reconceptualization of the notion of career and preparation for adult life.